Welcome to the Smoke and Rope Podcast. I'm Ryan Basore, your host as always, and today is episode 41. And we have my good friend, the godfather of medical and recreational marijuana of Michigan, Tim Beck. Tim, thanks for being on the show.
Oh, my pleasure. It's really nice. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Cool.
Yeah.
And Kevin, coming from an undisclosed location with his degree. What's going on, Kevin?
Not much, man. Just excited to talk with Tim. I haven't seen him in a while, and yeah, looking forward to it.
Awesome. Tom, Real Leaf Solutions up in Kalkaska. Tom, what's happening up there today?
Real quiet around here, Ryan. It's actually been pretty nice with the whirlwind leading up to 420, but now things seem to have settled down a little bit. So, doing great. It's a beautiful day.
Yeah, it's good. I know 420 was pretty incredible for the state, without a doubt. But I wanted to go in a little bit of background. When I first when I first started hearing about Tim Beck was right after 2008 and early 2009. I got my card and was one of the first patient caregivers, and I was reading any information I could about marijuana, Googling, and then the MMMA chat website chat board came on, and Tim was talked about a lot on that, and and then we met up. I was one of the first members of Cannabis Patients United, and so was Tim Beck, and I met you early 2010, and really appreciated. You were insurance executive at the time, owned your own agency, and had just left a career in insurance, so we kind of hit it off and really appreciated all the welcoming from people like yourselves and Chuck Ream and Matt Abel, and took us people like me and Jamie Lowell and the rest of us under the wing at that time. But besides that, Tim stayed involved with us at MAC. He helped lobby with the association, the first one, and stayed involved. And then and was really got us going, really responsible, you and Chuck Ream, about all the local ballot initiatives. So all these ballot initiatives over the course of the time was meant to teach municipalities that, hey, the people are ready for this, even though you don't see it. We're gonna do these, and you helped me, me and Jeff Hank with Lansing, that we passed, and then obviously you famously passed Detroit, your home city at that time. But I know there was others, Greg Schmidt and other people involved, but Ben Horner. But it was awesome with that, and then obviously through legalization, the whole way. So Tim, tell us a little bit about and another thing, obviously, that you're doing now. You run the Safer Michigan listserv, which if anyone out there is listening, we have a lot of industry people out here. It's just a wonderful listserv that's been going on, I think, about 8 or 9 years now, and that's not easy to do. And it's quite a group
It
of
was
people on that.
2009 is actually when it
2009.
started.
Wow.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
shit.
yeah.
So
And then
12
it got,
years.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
not easy. But Tim, go. Tell us the listeners a little bit about like why you got so heavily involved in marijuana activism, and then about the 2008, the MMMA, which you were a part of. Please.
Wow. Yeah, well, marijuana and I go a long way back. And that is, I first took my first hit of herb in 1970, in a dorm room at the University of Detroit where I was a student, and I really liked it. And so I just kind of continued to, well, just do it, and I never really, at that time in life, however, I was focused, on my studies and, extracurricular activities, and of course, getting a job, and it was not, exactly a focus in life. But and I ultimately I got into the insurance business and kind of worked my way up through, the ranks, so to speak, from selling, life insurance and mutual funds to families over the kitchen table, to ultimately the corporate level, where my greatest sale was Detroit Edison. I sold an insurance program to Detroit Edison, for a corporation that I was sales manager for. And eventually I started on my own. It was a challenge, but again, it wasn't. This corporation I was with had 500 employees, but the management was constantly in turmoil. I really I finally realized I know more than these people that are running this. And so I just went out on my own and started my own thing. And it was successful pretty quickly because I didn't have any learning curve. I really knew what I was doing. So over about 4, 5, 6, 8 years, I built up, a substantive company that basically ran itself. And I was the boss. I owned 100% of the stock, so nobody could tell me how hard or I had to work. So, it got to a certain level. I just sort of got bored with it, and I always liked politics. I happened to be, I was also student government president at the University of Detroit, and I've always had a kind of knack and thing for it. So as the corporation became successful, I got involved in the local Republican Party, in Grosse Pointe and, East Side Detroit. And I ran for state representative out there on the Republican ticket. That was the only game in town. I didn't make it. There were 8 people in the primary. I lost in the primary. I came in 4th. But the party bosses seemed to like me. And they said, hey, Tim, stick around. You got a future. So, okay, fine. And then I ended up editing the party newsletter for the local area. And it was great for a while until all of a sudden the board changed and they got some serious zealots, very social conservative type people that just didn't like my style. They didn't like my attitude. After 3 years, I knew the game was over and I had no future in the party at that local level. So I said, the hell with it. And so I got this idea, this brainstorm one day. Where can I start? What can I do to be independent? And I thought of marijuana. And right back then, California passed medical marijuana, and it seemed to be really hot. There seemed to be a lot of support in the polls. I said, I'm just going to do it. And I got this idea in 2001 to start a ballot initiative in Detroit to change local ordinance to legalize medical use of marijuana, in Detroit. Now, the first time it failed, we had poor legal advice. I had to go back, get signatures all over again in 2003. And then we actually made the ballot in 2004, and we won. I mean, every expert in the world was just absolutely astonished. And everybody was anybody. Granholm, Mike Cox, Kwame Kilpatrick, Debbie Dingell. Every political pontiff in the world just thought this was sickening. It's horrible. It's going to lose. The Detroit News, the Detroit Prefect, vote no. And fortunately in Detroit, and there was a bunch of preachers and this type of thing, and that came out against it. Everybody thought it was doomed. But the thing that people don't know about Detroit is Detroiters are really funny on this issue. They come across, a lot of them, they will never admit to even using marijuana, but they all do. A lot of them do. The voting booth, they don't listen to the preachers, and the governor and some of these other people. And it won with 59% of the vote, and that was a big deal. That was a really, really big deal. And as a result, the marijuana reform movement, which was basically at the time was Michigan NORML, that was kind of like it. And they heard about me, and I heard about them, and I joined, and as things went on, I became executive director of Michigan NORML. And I got this idea to do ballot initiatives in other cities across Michigan on medical marijuana. And the idea was to get the Marijuana Policy Project, MPP, to help fund a statewide ballot initiative like they did, in other states. And ultimately, that succeeded with these ballot issues and things. And it made the ballot. Now with me, there were certain MPP was very control oriented. They were very I don't know. The chemistry wasn't there, so I stepped aside. After we got the money, okay, and then they took the ball and ran with it and won. So and after that. That's really when a lot of the movement started. That's where I met you, Ryan, and a lot of other folks.
Yeah.
Once medical
You want
passed,
to tell?
there was, yeah.
I was going to say, do you want to tell us a little bit about what it was like for somebody like you? There was just like maybe a handful of activists really doing it, and then you got this passed, and then that was kind of the next wave of the next generation. I know people like Tom and Kevin and I got involved, and then when early on it was Mark Passerini brought in, and Jamie Lowell and Rick Thompson. That was kind of Robin Schneider, Dory Edwards, all that. So what was that like as far as seeing all these new people and welcoming us. You know.
I guess I was just really delighted. I was really excited about the whole thing, to how, you know, yeah, people just started to come out of the woodwork. It emboldened folks in a good way. And I mean, there was stuff. I mean, I remember Jamie Lowell. My God, when he started that Third Coast, him and Daryl. I mean, I was really fearful. That was dangerous stuff to me. I mean, I was thinking he could get busted any day by the DEA. I mean, it was just so out there, but nothing happened, and other things happened. Other people did that, and yeah, and unfortunately, you were the only one busted. Well, I mean, Ryan. I mean, there were other people. Ultimately, that's another story, as you know. But the yeah, it was great, and the Big Daddy, Rick Ferris. You
Yep.
remember
Yep.
him? I mean, he came in there, and it was just exciting, and I felt um, like I felt good about it because I was there to kind of help mentor people, and after going through some of the stuff that I did, you know, I fortunately didn't. I made mistakes, but I didn't repeat the mistakes, and I was able to help some people avoid mistakes that I had made, in the past. And I think, in a way, I helped smooth things out, um, so, but it was like a whole new era. I mean, like what's that expression? Thousand flowers blooming. All these people just popping up, and becoming activists, and wow, and normal. I mean, it started to grow, and then there other groups were founded, and some of the people are very, like I say, pretty sophisticated folks in their own way, business wise and everything, and it was just wow, it was electric. I mean, it was really, really wonderful, wonderful thing. And then later on, I got the idea that I always felt the idea that medical is not the answer. The only solution to the marijuana problem in this country is legalization, okay, and regulation, whatever, in some form. And that was always my goal, even from day one, but I did it in increments. I got criticized for that, by some people that wanted it all. They wanted immediate gratification right now. What are you talking about? We can't copyright. We got to go the whole thing. No, 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 no. Cut it, guys. Come on. And there were a couple failed ballot initiatives to legalize it. They were terribly, well, they didn't make it. And it was a lot of people got really driven through the ringer and worked and their butts off for, kind of for, and it didn't happen. But again, I took this incremental approach. Chuck Ream and I, we decided to do ballot initiatives on legalization this time in various cities, across the state. And the nice thing about that is ultimately over some years, I think we passed 17 legalization initiatives all over the state. Port Huron, Mount Pleasant, Lansing, Jackson, Detroit. Other folks took the ball in Grand Rapids, and I mean, it was quite astounding. Again, we went against all conventional wisdom. Everybody thought we were nuts, and we won practically every one of them, except a few of them out in some rural areas. It was like it freaked out the establishment, so to speak, and the skeptics. And then and that was, like I say, that was a big deal at the time. And Ryan, I remember you, and I had such great admiration for you personally, because you were the one that really got the ball rolling, in Lansing. And of course, at that time, you had been, busted and so forth, and you were on your way to, to the can. And I remember how you worked. I mean, you were working on getting signatures, doing stuff in Lansing, I think within 2 to 3 days before you had to report to prison. I thought, damn, this guy is something else. It's like, wow, and I really, admired, your stoicism, your discipline, your dependability. But
Thank you.
again, you weren't the only one. There were a lot of people in their own way that stood up, against the folks in that town and did work. But you were an exception in the way you, got it going. So, then, and like I say, we had people that really just came out of the woodwork and wanted to do it, and then all of a sudden they're calling me, well, how do we do this, Tim? And and we, and Chuck, and we helped it out, and and at that point we did all this stuff, and the idea again was to lure big money to Michigan. So we had a real well-financed campaign, not like had happened a couple times in the past where it was poorly funded and it was almost all volunteer and that never made it. But again, and it, I guess it worked again. And in this particular case, since this was a policy project, and I had, well, let's say an attitude toward Mr. Campia over what happened back in 2008. Okay,
Oh yeah.
I'll spare you the details. Okay, but they were more scared about me opposing it, and they said, "Do you want to help?" I said, "No, I don't want to be involved in it." Okay, you guys, you got your drill down. You know what you're doing, and there's plenty of younger folks out there that I'm sure, could be of assistance. So I just sat it out. Plus, they wanted me to shut down the safer listserv. They wanted control,
Okay.
all the message, in Michigan. Yeah, I said I'm not doing that. No. And yeah, they didn't like it, but I said, no, come on, no, I'm not doing it. So we were kind of an independent voice, throughout. But it was other people that carried the ball, and later on, Rob Campia got basically fired, in the middle of the campaign, and other people came over, and they were easier to work with. Okay, and it was of course massively successful, and it did win. And I remember that victory party you and I were hanging out, Ryan, in Lansing, and it was so after going through all this stuff, it was like I didn't feel anything. It was very strange. It was almost anticlimactic. When we won after all these years of struggle, it was almost too good to be true. I couldn't even process it hardly, at the time. A couple days later, it sunk in. But that's, I don't know, in a nutshell, that's, kind of my story. And I've taken a point. I'm retired now, and at least from frontline, activism. There's plenty of qualified people out there, and I figure, at my age, well, what the heck? I'll be 70, next year. And I think, you see examples of all these people, old timers, they hang on and hang on and hang on and try to control the scene and be the big player and all that shit. No, that's just not for me. That's not for me. I had my moment in the sun. I did my thing, and I know who I am and what I want. And it's just a real delight to see the way this has come about. I mean, that's MICIA. You got, all these organizations, all these people, all these attorneys. It's grown into a huge industry. I mean, people are making real money off of this, and a lot of people have been kept out of prison because it's legal now. And I think and again, it's an extraordinary thing. And I can kind of, like I say, rest easy. I basically these days I live on a small sort of hobby farm, out in rural Michigan now. And I do the safer listserv. I moderate the listserv, which seems to be pretty popular with a lot of people. A lot of people have been around a long time, and they like it. And it's a daily news feed. I mean, from the ridiculous to the sublime in some cases. People, stick around. We got about 350 plus, people on it over the years. And so I enjoy doing that. I like it. And that's sort of my thing. And I have other stuff to do too out here, but it's wonderful to see a new generation. It's really wonderful to see that whole, phenomenon just coming about, and so many people making real money, so many people enjoying themselves, so many people are been liberated. So, I guess that's in a nutshell.
Hey, Tim, it's Kevin Pybus over at Truu Cannabis. I wanted to say, I feel like the whole state of Michigan owes you a token of gratitude on this, developing a strategy to actually go after the problem. I've said for a long time, the standing on the Capitol steps and smoking joints and tie-dye clothing, that was getting nowhere. And it took someone like yourselves, you, Ryan, some of the original people that were out there doing this to come up with a good strategy to attack them at. And that was, getting them at their own game. That was putting on suits and ties, donating money to campaigns, negotiating in good faith that they're going to do what they say they're going to do, and getting it done. And Tim, when I first met you, I was working with the MCDA. It was the first time I had stepped out from hiding, so to speak, and started to publicly advocate for this. And I was coming up to Lansing, and you really impressed me because you came up to me when I was walking into one of the Senate hearings, and you said, "Hey, Kevin, Ryan, my name's Tim Beck. It's good to see you today," or something along those lines. And I was like, "Wait, how does he know who I am?" You know what I mean? And so what it showed me is you'd done your research. You are serious about trying to get this stuff done, and you earned my respect straight away. My question for you is, over the years, have you received any pushback while you've been advocating? Have you ever, gotten in trouble with the police over what you're doing, or felt any pressure as you navigated your way through to legalization?
Well, yeah, uh, quite a bit in some cases. Probably the most infamous or whatever incident that there was a thing I was on, this off the record, TV show with this Tim Skubic and so back. And, one of the panelists said that, well, how do you know this is ever going to pass? Isn't this just, I'm paraphrasing now, but isn't this completely useless? Isn't this a waste of time? How do you really know? I say, well, the fact is it's inevitable simply because of the changing demographics of the state. And the fact is the vast majority of people that don't want, legalization are older people, okay? They're dying off. Okay, and as the years go by, that demographic is going to change, and we are going to have legalization. That just created a firestorm because some enemies, some people didn't like it, accused me of wanting old people to die, that I wanted the death of old people in order to attain my agenda. And I got the hate mail and the calls of just the ugly, kind of stuff with this twisted version that I wanted to kill old people to get my
Old
sick
people
agenda.
die?
Yes. That's what I wanted. I wanted them to die. it was pretty twisted stuff, and it went on, for a while. There was that one, and then I got a lot of scorn for people in the Republican Party and people that knew me and everything like that. I was just the rumor that I was just crazy, that I was mentally unstable, and so forth. That was another one. But the other thing was, I did get harassed by cops quite a bit. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but what happened, with this lien system, they have every damn thing about your life, every encounter, I'm convinced, with the police is all in that database. And, word, I think, got out that, Tim Beck, this son of a bitch, and, I would be stopped by cops, just sort of randomly, and they'd want to search the car and they want to talk to him. How you doing today, Mr. Beck? What's up? You going over a little over the line today, huh? I said, sir, I don't know, and there was a couple other times where, I ended up in the lockup, okay, 3 times actually, because of my contempt for certain cops that had stopped me, okay, and I didn't hesitate, to, kind of tell them where to go. In one case, it wasn't about marijuana, but it was, there was a weird traffic stop, like in the city of Detroit, and I was on my way to a meeting. It was a no turn in a construction zone, but it was after hours. No construction workers were there, and a lot of people were doing that. Then he stopped me, this cop, and his buddy, and a whole bunch of other people held him hostage. And I said, man, and he confiscated our licenses, and it went on and on and on. I said, man, he came back and said, you're a real piece of shit, man. You're an asshole. I want to tell you that right now, and we're going to deal with this. You get out of that car now, put your hands on the hood and spread them. That was the immediate, he barked that command. And I didn't do it right away. And he called for backup, and they pulled a gun. And I got out at that point, and the cuffs were on, the car was impounded, I was in the lockup. But the thing was so damn stupid. I got a great attorney, and I was charged with disorderly conduct. Now, disorderly conduct, what that means in terms of encounters with a police officer, you actually can call a cop any name in the book. You can call him anything you want. The only thing that you can't do is use what are called fighting words, like I'm going to kill you, I'll break your leg, I want to bust your face. That stuff. No, you can't do that. But there was never anything like that, and so the city didn't even prosecute. They defaulted, so we got dismissal with prejudice against them. We sued in federal court, and I cashed a check for $17,500. Okay. Now then, the other couple were marijuana related. I was in the it was in a massive traffic jam at Metro Airport. It was boring. I was sitting there, and I was toking a roach, and they hadn't hit, silly me, they had hidden cameras all over the place. So I got spotted and harassed and arrested, and you know, and I got out of that when I have no criminal record. There was another time I was parked along I-94 talking on the phone. I didn't want to drive and talk, and I was so into the conversation, I didn't notice a state police officer pulling up. And he said, "What's going on?" You know, this kind of thing. And whoa, you know. Now, silly me, yeah, I wasn't paying attention because I had like a flask, okay, with a splash of Jack Daniels, and it was sitting on the seat. Now, I hadn't been drinking at all, period. But then, of course, it just broke down. It got bad and back and forth, and I spent the night in the lockup. And again, in this case, it was, you know, dismissed. I mean, I paid like a $350 fine for open intoxicants, and then that was it. But they really brought this marijuana. They charged me with illegal possession of illegal transport of medical marijuana, for one thing. Yeah, that was one of them. And then possession of a felony possession of a drug analog, okay? Because they found some Xanax, you know, which I have a legitimate prescription for, but the prescription bottle, they could tell you was expired. So, I mean, they just threw everything in the book at me, and finally they dropped that. The prosecutor, 7 months later, you know, they finally decided what to do with me. As far as the illegal transport of medical marijuana, I said, you know, I told my attorney, I said, you tell that prosecutor that if you're going to charge me with that, I want a bench trial, okay? And I want the judge to find me guilty, okay? So I can take this to the appellate court, and we're going to get that stupid ass law out of here. It's going to get ruled unconstitutional. Oh, no. They dropped that like a hot potato because they knew it ain't going to work. So, and eventually it didn't. Actually, they pressed it, and that did get overturned. So, but what happened with the random stops? The way I finally cured that is I signed the ownership of the car over to my wife. Okay, so it was under a completely different name. So when they scanned the plates, it didn't register as Timothy Beck, and that ended the problem. But other than that, and there were probably, I mean, there was people, you know, within the cannabis reform movement itself that didn't like me. You know, they didn't like my style. They didn't like my philosophy and the way I was doing things, and there were internal, you know, fighting going on. But unfortunately, well, fortunately anyway, it never got to the level like it did in other states, like Arizona at the time, and I think even I think it was Oregon maybe, where the factions within the reform community were fighting among themselves. It got so bad in certain sides, in the end, they were working with the cops to defeat legalization. And this was in Arizona. You know, I mean, I don't know. Ohio was another real zoo, but of infighting. But it never got to that level, you know, here in Michigan, thank God. You know, eventually everybody, you know, closed ranks. And again, that's one of the reasons I wanted to get out, in the sense of not being involved, you know, in writing that law, the legalization law and everything, because I felt to some of these people, I was kind of a lightning rod, you know, because I didn't take their BS, or what I considered BS, okay? I dealt with it accordingly, and, you know, there was stuff, mainly these were people that, you know, just had to have it all now, and it had to be pure, you know, and eventually the good became the enemy of the perfect, you know. So Robin and I and some other people, we actually did work with Rick Jones, we worked with Republicans, you know, to get that dispensary bill passed. A lot of them didn't like it, a lot of people didn't like it, but I knew if we get that passed, that's going to bring us real close to legalization, because we'll already have a structure set up that the legislature designed, and we just mimicked that, you know, and that really, you know, but they didn't like it. They didn't want that at all. And there were other legislative changes, the so-called Walsh bills was another thing, about, you know, better defining medical and doctor-patient relationship. But I felt we needed to do that. We needed to get some clarity. And yeah, I got crucified by some elements of the community, you know, for working with those folks. But I figured the more we do to legitimize this thing, to make it normal, you know, in the eyes of the rest of the world, and get the legislature on board, the better shot we had to go mainstream and to win.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was definitely important to getting it done. Tom, you have a question over there, buddy?
Well, yeah, it kind of bridges from what you were saying. You actually answered a lot of my questions right there. But looking back at, you know, the 2008 Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. At what level were you involved with writing the language involved with the act, or involved
Oh,
with
I was,
the people who
I was,
actually? I'm sorry.
yeah, I was deeply involved.
Okay,
Yeah,
and so like,
and see,
so how did
yeah,
all that factionizing of people? Everyone has the ultimate end goal for the most part. Some people may have more of a purist. Some people may have more of a
yeah,
capitalist. And
yeah.
but how was that, balancing that in order to come up with the act the way that it stood? It's a solid piece of legislation, legislative act. But just how like what are your biggest challenges?
Well, my biggest challenges was getting along with the people at the Marijuana Policy Project. Okay, they had a cult of secrecy. Okay, within that group, and the way they kind of got me into the orbit is that they wanted. I was part of their inner circle, part of the whole thing, writing it. They ran their what do you call it? They came up with what I thought was a very sound structure, this caregiver system, avoid dispensaries. We wanted to win. We wanted to win, that's all. And they were very good at polling to find out what the hot buttons are and what isn't. And so I went along with it. I thought it was pretty sound. I thought maybe it was little too conservative. I thought maybe we could add a few other diseases and, conditions that, but I didn't fight
Absolutely.
it. It was what they did. And the problem with normal, they felt that, and the normal folks, and I don't blame them, they expected to also know what's going on, and share and the whole thing. But they wanted only me to then dictate to normal, well, here it is, and I can't tell you why. Incompatible, just incompatible. And without permission, without getting formal permission, I sent a copy of the proposed legislation before it went public to like about 20 of our top people. And then when MPP found out, they just blew up. They went nuts, and that I had tried, that I was dangerous, that I had compromised the secrecy, and the goddamn thing was going to be, revealed anyway.
Right.
In a couple of weeks. This was no,
Right.
But again, it was a personality, and I'm a strong personality. I can be, and they were too. And it just got to that point. I said, guys, I've had enough. Okay. And they said, yeah, well, you're going to have to sign the cease and desist order. Yeah, say that if I have any involvement in that campaign, I'm liable up to $1 million in damages. I signed it, I said I didn't give a shit because I knew that if we didn't have the money, it
Right.
ain't going to go. It
Yeah.
just ain't going to go. And I felt I just needed to swallow any pride I had, step aside, do your thing, folks, and that was it. So I was out of the picture for about a year and a half, and they did their thing, and of course they won, and we couldn't have done it
Right.
without their money.
What do
But
you wish was different about the act?
I can't think of anything different. I wish they could have added stuff like depression,
Right.
okay, and anxiety disorders, okay, because I happen to have a thing like that, so
Right.
it's a personal, and a lot of other people do.
Or allow
And
your doctor to
marijuana is
make
very
the
helpful.
decision, or
Yeah,
allow the
yeah,
doctor to make the
exactly,
decision whether,
yeah,
regardless of the condition.
exactly,
And then
exactly.
also not
But
outlawing the whole carrying of, how we transport cannabis wasn't really outlawed,
yeah,
so that or it wasn't outlined in the act, so that became
right.
problems for a lot of people until you fix
Yep.
that. So
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of stuff. I mean, you cannot. This is very new, back
right.
then in '08. So we were on uh, ground, untrodden ground. So we were
Sure.
bound to make mistakes. We were bound to have some holes, loopholes, or
Yeah.
stuff in there that we never thought about, and
Sure.
only
Of
emerged
course.
later on, and where we got
Yeah.
attacked. But no, I didn't. I thought their idea was sound, and the whole idea for the caregiver model, rather than institute dispensaries of any kind, was because George Bush was, still president, and they were busting dispensaries out in California, and dispensaries
Yes.
really had a bad rap. And he had this Bill Schuette, part of his presentation. They had a commercial during the campaign of some young tough, like hoodlum types, in San Francisco, the Devil's Den. They're scoring. They just scored some weed out of a dispensary. They were running out to get high, and they pushed an old lady. just pushing a lady into the street while they were on a rampage to get
Sure.
high. And you want this in your neighborhood? Yeah, that kind of stuff. So, but the caregiver thing ultimately it made it impossible for the federal government to enforce federal law. Because here if you have thousands of people all over the state growing small amounts of marijuana, the DEA is going to be run ragged. They're not.
Right.
But if you had just a few dispensaries out there, bam, they could
Right.
nip that real quick. But they could not. Gave us, gave us some real protection. And a lot of people didn't understand the logic, but that was the logic. I thought that was very well thought out, given the day and age, given the time that we were living in.
Oh, still brilliant. Still brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's without a doubt. You know, one thing, Tim, I go around now and my products in a lot of stores, and I go talk to the young bud tenders, and they're flabbergasted as we're reliving that era. Like I tell them it was 10 years ago that the United States military was brought in to raid a caregiver grow in Michigan. You know, that's how much the world has changed. Super excited about the next 10 years. But one thing that just popped up in my Facebook memories from 2 years ago, and you were front and center, and you know this was a historic day in our lives as well. Was 2 years ago, just about 2 years ago, in a few days, Dana won Dana Nesso
Oh,
won the primary
yeah,
at
yeah,
Cobo,
yeah,
and
yeah,
me
yeah,
and you were
yeah.
up there on the
Oh
stage
man,
and all them
I
pictures.
know.
So
That was
talk,
yeah,
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 talk a little bit about that because I know you were an independent and Republican, and we all got behind it. But that was,
yeah,
we might
yeah.
not see something like that again in our lifetimes.
No, see, my theory or my vision, or for lack of a better term, for the movement, was to model ourselves as a single issue organization. In other words, like the NRA. The NRA don't give a shinola whether you're Democrat or Republican or whatever the hell. As long as you sign on to their agenda, they're going to back you. They'll support you. Right to life, oddly enough, is not an arm of the Republican Party. Sometimes it is, but they will support Democrats. Anybody, doesn't matter, regardless of your ideology. So I thought that was the best way to have any semblance of unity. The idea we don't care what your politics are. And, again, whether I would have supported Dana or not in the end, I'm not sure. I probably would have, but I don't know. The thing, but see, where that happened when I first heard about her. I read about her in the paper, her activities with this with that lesbian couple that sneeze. Yeah, that lesbian couple that adopted that kid, and it went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they won, and Dana was a big player in that. So then I've heard from Michael Comorn that she's running for Attorney General, and she supports weed. And I said, well, Tim, he asked me, Tim, what do you think? And I looked into it, and I said, yeah. It was obvious she was credible, she was competent, she wasn't some kook, or anything like that. She was well qualified. And whatever differences I had, which were some, on policy levels, I'm not going to go into that. But, again, I just put that aside. The hell with it. We need to do what we're supposed to do, regardless of her other politics. We got to support her and back her because this is going to be a big, big thing. And, you were very close to the action. I know that, Ryan. When I heard about her, I did absolutely everything I could, to promote her candidacy. And what we did, you and a whole number of other folks, I mean, we really got the community to show up at the Democratic Party convention that April to get the nomination. You just don't go on the ballot. You get to become a candidate for Attorney General in any of the parties. You have to get nominated at a party convention. Okay, so for Secretary of State, Attorney General, and so on. Now the governor, that's different. There is a primary, but with those offices, you get, And what happened? The irony, and the Democratic Party itself is a very insular kind of group, usually controlled by unions. Unions are the primary entity that exerts control. Certain black folks in Detroit, various clerics and whatever leaders, are also a big part of the Democratic Party. And so they just decided, well, we're going to nominate this. What's that character?
Pat Miles Jr.
Yeah, Pat Miles. Yeah, there you go. Federal attorney. Western District, and of course he's black. That really. I mean, I understand that. That's no put down. I get it. Okay, it's politics, and they felt there's a thing in the Democratic Party. The thinking is that you have to have a so-called balanced ticket. You have to have a black, you have to have a female, and you have to have a male in order to appeal to all these constituencies. So there was really no place for Dana in that milieu, and they felt Patrick Miles was more credible. The unions got behind him. The black community, for the most part, got behind him, and they decided they're just going to do it. Fuck you. You know, and so the only way we could beat that machine is getting people to the darn convention to become members of the Democratic Party. Because if you once you got your party membership card, you could just walk in, you can breeze right in, you know, to Cobo Hall, you know, at the time, and vote for the candidate of your choice. And it was a marvelous thing. And the community, we brought like almost 400 people, 400 new people to that convention in Detroit. It was overwhelming, and of course she got a lot of support from the LGBT, you know, community, and she got support from very younger folks that were very strong progressives. Okay, they didn't like unions, they didn't relate to unions. Okay, so those three elements, I mean, really, you know, united around Dana, and if it wasn't for if any one of them, cannabis folks, LGBT, or young progressives had not been there, she likely would have lost, you know. But we just flooded the hall, and we outvoted them. We outvoted them. It was embarrassing. I remember this one political consultant, a black guy, kind of real, Steve. Oh God, his dad was a big minister in Detroit. Anyway, I'll think of the name. But anyway, he was a so-called consultant. And I remember, you know, in Bridge magazine, you know, he wrote a whole thing. It was the end of the line. The party is going to get slaughtered at the polls. And then he especially zeroed in that unconventional or unusual individuals, or meaning weird, or the assholes. But he didn't use that term. You know, got in, and she was elected by marijuana users. And gays and lesbians, and you know, this kind of thing, like she was just abnormal, and now they're screwed because it's all females, so they're going to lose. This was a bankrupt kind. Steve Hood, that's his name. Yeah, his dad was a big clergyman in Detroit years ago, but that was the thinking. He articulated the thinking. A lot of the mainstream and the political bosses, you know, that they went so against their ideology. How can three females? We can't do this. This is unfair. They're all white too. They're all white. Three white females. What kind of message does that send about inclusivity in our party? You see, and well, we said fuck you in so many words. It was water off a duck's back, and we just went on. And you know, I remember I found Steve Hood's, because I knew the guy before I was on a TV show some years ago that he had about marijuana, and I happened to have his email. I sent a snarky little email to him after he wrote that column. I enjoyed it. You know, he never replied, but yeah, I got the message. And so, but it was brilliant. It was a brilliant work of political gamesmanship. It was just absolutely extraordinary, as you know, Ryan. And it was wonderful, and I like her. I really, you know, I'm very happy, and I'll vote for her again. You know, I mean, I have issues about this Enbridge pipeline. I don't agree with her on that. I don't agree with her, and this is only my issues. Okay, I'm not. You know, other people disagree, and I think that the hysteria surrounding COVID. Okay, I'm not saying it's not real. Okay, but there's some exaggeration there. And I didn't like her and Gretchen's way of handling that, but what the hell? She's been fine. Yeah. She calls it as she sees it. It's been honest. I support her and love her. She's great.
That's awesome, Timmy. That's what I always say to people. And, you know, some of the purists that, of course, I still hang out with, they're like, well, she'd be good to doing this, and this, and this. And I'm like, well, let's look at this. Over the past 100 years, she's probably the most pro-cannabis AG in the history of the country. So let's take it a step from there and then work backwards. But besides from that, I know we could talk all day, and I actually learned some stuff today. This was awesome, Tim. I know we talk a lot, but that was cool. I wanted to just wrap up and let the guys say goodbye, and before we head out. So Kevin, at Truu, you got any parting advice or words?
No, I just want to give a big thank you to Tim for all his efforts over the years. You guys have heard me use the saying, we stand on the shoulders of those who came before us, and we definitely stood on your shoulders to get to where we're at today. And you know what? Someday there'll be people standing on our shoulders as we work to continue the fight. And so thanks for all your efforts. Thanks for your strategies on getting us to where we needed to be. It's been imperative, and you're really appreciated. The industry loves you. Thanks, Tim.
You're very kind. Appreciate that. Yeah, thank you.
Tom up at Real Leaf.
I couldn't have said it any better, man. Yeah, just thank you so much. I mean, your tenacity and your you're a very forthright individual, and I believe that without your level-headedness on how to bring this to fruition, we probably wouldn't be sitting here today. Probably would have set us back a few more years, you know. But so thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you all
Yep.
too, guys. Really.
Yep. Tim, any final words for the viewers or for us?
No, that's about that's the story. That's just Givy, and I just want to thank everybody for listening. It's an honor, pleasure to be on the show, and I like I say, I'm the biggest cheerleader you guys got now at this point, and I really support everything. And thank you so much. And yeah, I mean, it's some good times, a lot of fun, Ryan, over the years, as you know. We've worked
Yep.
together on a lot of stuff. And thank you, man. Good, congratulations
this
on
is
your life, man, on your life, really, the way you've been done so well for yourself against a lot of
thank
odds.
you. Appreciate all the phone calls before I was going into prison and afterwards and coming and visiting me and all that. So that's one of the things we get to do on here is relive Michigan marijuana history and how it's forever will be, videoed. And Michigan is so different than a lot of states. And one of the big reasons we had a Tim Beck back years ago, along with a lot of other great people that pushed us forward. So I appreciate it all, Tim. Appreciate the mentorship and the friendship over the years. So
Well,
thank you.
you have a great day, sir. Thank you, everyone. All right.